The Galactic Council chamber was a mess. Voices shouted over each other, lights flashed on dozens of computer screens, and in the middle of it all stood Queen Valera. She was huge, easily 12 feet tall, her insect-like body covered in dark purple armor plating. Her 6 legs clicked nervously on the marble floor as she faced the council members who were supposed to be the smartest beings in the galaxy. Right now they looked terrified. "My children cannot be contained," Valera said, her voice coming through a small device attached to her throat that translated her natural clicking sounds into words everyone could understand. "Every method you have tried has failed. Every single one." She wasn't angry anymore. Jake could see that from where he stood in the back corner with his mop and bucket. She was desperate. Scared. A mother who didn't know how to help her own kids. Admiral Croth stood up so fast his chair fell backward. He was a reptile species, covered in green scales with yellow eyes that could see in complete darkness. Those eyes were wide with panic now. "Failed? Your Majesty, your twins didn't just escape. They destroyed 3 of our maximum security facilities. The first one, they simply walked through the walls like the walls weren't even there. The second one, they bent all the metal bars into balloon animals." Balloon animals. A bird-like council member named Trell fluttered her wings anxiously. "The third facility was our most advanced location. We brought in the psionic suppressors, machines that can shut down mental powers." The twins looked at them for maybe 5 seconds, and the machines just melted into puddles. "What about the security teams?" asked another council member, this one resembling a floating jellyfish in a water-filled suit. Croth's scaled face somehow managed to look even more distressed. "The security teams are, well, they're alive. Physically unharmed. But mentally." He pulled up a video screen showing a group of armed guards standing in a parking lot, flapping their arms and making bird noises. "They think they're parrots," Croth said flatly. "All 23 of them. Our best doctors can't fix it." The twins rewrote their brains somehow. Council Prime Vorith leaned forward in his seat. He was an old being, no one knew exactly how old, with gray skin and 4 eyes that usually looked wise and calm. Today they just looked tired. "The Mentari monks. They've been training for thousands of years to resist mental attacks. Surely they could." "The monks now believe they are vegetables," Valera interrupted, her voice breaking slightly. "Carrots specifically. They spend their days sitting in a garden trying to grow roots. This is what my children can do, and I cannot stop them. Their father and I, we've tried everything our people know. Nothing works." Jake pushed his mop slowly across the floor, getting closer to the big observation window. He'd been working at the Galactic Council headquarters for about 8 months now. It was a good job. Decent pay, interesting people from all over the galaxy, and usually pretty quiet. But for the last 3 days, this room had been packed with worried officials all trying to figure out what to do about the Queen's twins. Through the thick reinforced glass, Jake could see into the holding cell they'd built just yesterday. It was the 4th one this week. The walls were made of some material he didn't recognize, probably something super strong from another planet. There were cameras everywhere and at least a dozen scientists watching monitors outside the room. And in the middle of all that technology and security, there were 2 little creatures. They really did look like baby insects, kind of like if a praying mantis and a beetle had babies. Their bodies were about the size of house cats, covered in the same purple armor as their mother but lighter, more lavender-colored. They had tiny antennae that drooped down sadly. They were huddled together in the corner, wrapped around each other. Jake stopped mopping. He'd seen scared kids before. His sister Tracy had 3 boys, and Jake had spent plenty of weekends babysitting when they were little. He knew what a scared kid looked like, human or not. These twins looked terrified. Back in the council chamber, the arguing was getting louder. A council member with tentacles was suggesting they launch the twins into deep space. Another one thought they should ask the military to use some kind of weapon. Each idea seemed worse than the last. "We must control them," Croth insisted, slamming his fist down again. "Before they hurt someone. Before they destroy something we can't rebuild." "Control, control, control," muttered a small furry delegate. "That's all anyone says. Has anyone asked why these children are so upset?" "They're infants," Croth shot back. "They don't have reasons. They just have power they can't manage." Jake wrung out his mop, but he wasn't really paying attention to the dirty water anymore. He was watching the twins through the glass. One of them, the slightly smaller one, suddenly looked up. Its big multifaceted eyes seemed to look right at Jake. The little creature tilted its head, antennae perking up just a tiny bit. Then alarms started blaring. "They're doing it again," someone shouted. On the monitors, Jake could see the walls of the containment cell starting to ripple like water. The twins weren't moving, but the solid matter around them was beginning to bend and twist. Scientists ran toward the cell, carrying equipment. Security guards raised their weapons, even though everyone knew weapons didn't work. Council members jumped to their feet. "Evacuate the sector," Vorth commanded. But Jake noticed something everyone else missed. He'd been watching the twins' faces. They'd been calm, curious, even looking at him through the window. The smaller one had even seemed almost happy for a second. Then the scientists came running with their machines and needles. The security guards raised their guns. All that noise and chaos and fear. That's when the walls started melting. The twins weren't attacking. They were protecting themselves. Just like his nephew Danny used to hide under the bed when he got overwhelmed at birthday parties. Too much noise, too many people, too much everything. These weren't monsters. They were just scared kids with abilities nobody understood, surrounded by people who treated them like weapons instead of children. Jake set down his mop and bucket. This was probably a really stupid idea. He was just a janitor. He cleaned floors and emptied trash cans. He had zero training in alien psychology or whatever these twins could do. But he'd been watching for 3 days and he'd seen something everyone else was too busy to notice. Maybe that's exactly why he needed to try. "Mr. Miller, this is completely insane." Jake stood in Council Prime Vortha's office, still gripping his yellow mop bucket. Water dripped slowly onto the expensive alien carpet beneath his work boots. He probably should have left the bucket outside, but honestly, he'd been called in so suddenly that he didn't have time to put his cleaning supplies away. Next to him stood Dr. Beth Carson, the only other human working at the Galactic Council headquarters. She was a xenobiologist, which meant she studied alien life forms. Smart woman, always carrying tablets full of research, usually had at least 3 pens stuck in her hair. Right now she was staring at Vorth like he just suggested they all jump out an airlock. "Let me make sure I understand this correctly," Beth said, pushing her glasses up her nose. "You want our janitor, a man whose job is literally mopping floors and taking out the trash, to babysit the most dangerous beings in the galaxy? The reality-warping alien royalty that have turned your security teams into people who think they're birds." Vortha's 4 eyes blinked slowly. Jake had been working here long enough to know that meant the old alien was embarrassed. It was kind of like how humans look away when they're uncomfortable, except Vorth had 4 eyes to coordinate. "Dr. Carson, I understand your concern," Vorth said carefully. "Believe me, if we had any other option we would take it. But we are, quite frankly, out of ideas." "What happened to that special task force you brought in?" Beth asked. "The ones with the fancy armor and the mental shields?" Admiral Croth, who was also in the office, made a grinding sound with his teeth. "They lasted 45 minutes. Now they're convinced they're a school of fish. They've been swimming in circles in the station's pool for 2 days. Jake tried not to laugh. He failed. A small snort escaped before he could stop it. Everyone looked at him. "Sorry," Jake said quickly. "That's just, fish? Really?" "It's not funny, Mr. Miller," Croth growled, but even he looked a little embarrassed. Vorth sighed, which sounded weird coming from an alien who didn't really have lungs like humans did. "Yesterday the twins escaped again. The 5th time this week." "How?" Beth asked. "I thought you upgraded the containment cell with those new energy barriers." "We did," Vorth said tiredly. "The twins simply rewrote the computer code controlling the barriers. Changed the patrol routes in the security system so no guards were anywhere near their cell. Then they walked out the front entrance like they owned the place." Jake leaned forward, genuinely curious now. "Where did they go?" Vorth looked even more embarrassed. "The cafeteria on level 7. "What were they doing there?" "Eating ice cream," Vorth admitted. "Chocolate and vanilla. They made quite a mess." Beth suddenly laughed, a real genuine laugh that filled the whole office. "Of course they did. They're kids. Little kids who wanted ice cream." "Exactly," Jake said, getting excited now. "That's what I've been trying to tell people. Everyone keeps treating them like weapons or monsters or some kind of military threat. But they're just babies who don't understand what's happening to them." "They've put 17 people in the medical wing," Croth pointed out. "Yeah, but they haven't actually hurt anyone, have they?" Jake countered. Sure, thinking you're a parrot is weird, but those guards are physically fine. The twins could have killed them if they wanted to. They didn't." Vortha's 4 eyes focused on Jake with new interest. "Go on." Jake set down his mop bucket and leaned against the wall. "Look, I've been watching them for 3 days now. I know I'm just the guy who cleans the floors, but I see things. Every time someone comes at those kids with weapons or those glowing restraint devices or needles, they freak out. The walls start melting, people's minds get scrambled, alarms go off. It's like a panic reaction. And you've observed something different? Beth asked, her scientist brain clearly engaged now. Yesterday I was cleaning the hallway outside their cell, Jake said. It was early, like 6 in the morning. Nobody else was around. I was humming while I worked, just this old song my mom used to sing. Nothing special. What happened? Vorith leaned forward. The twins had been throwing stuff around their cell all night. The monitors showed toys and furniture floating everywhere, real chaotic. But when I started humming, they stopped. Just completely stopped. They came up to the glass and watched me clean. Their little antennae were twitching, and they seemed almost calm. Croth crossed his scaly arms. That could have been coincidence. Maybe, Jake admitted. But then I tried something. I sat down near the glass and kept humming. They sat down too, right on the other side. We stayed like that for maybe 10 minutes. They didn't destroy anything. Didn't mess with anyone's mind. They just listened. Beth was looking at Jake differently now, like she was seeing him for the first time. That's actually fascinating from a behavioral standpoint. It's foolish, Croth insisted. Miller has no training, no abilities, no way to defend himself if the twins attack. That's exactly the point though, isn't it? Beth said, her voice getting faster as ideas connected in her head. Think about it. Every person we've sent in has had weapons or psionic powers or some kind of mental defense. The twins can sense all that. They can read minds, rewrite thoughts. But humans were different. How so? Vorith asked. We don't have psionic signatures like most species do, Beth explained. Our brains work differently. The twins probably can't read Jake's thoughts or mess with his head the same way they can with everyone else. And humans were incredibly social creatures. Empathetic. We read emotions through body language and tone of voice. Jake's not approaching this like a security problem. He's treating them like scared kids because that's what they are. The room went quiet for a moment. Then Queen Valera, who had been standing silently in the corner this whole time, spoke up. Her voice through the translator was soft, almost broken. Let the human try. Everyone turned to look at her. Your Majesty, Croth started, but she raised one of her massive clawed hands. If he fails, we are no worse than we are now, Valera said. My children are suffering. I cannot reach them. Our people's methods do not work. Perhaps this human's approach will. Vorith looked at Jake for a long moment. Do you understand what you're volunteering for, Mr. Miller? These children have powers we don't fully comprehend. They could hurt you. They could rewrite your mind. Jake thought about his sister's kids back on Earth. About how little Danny would have meltdowns at loud parties until Jake took him outside to look at stars. How nephew Ricky would throw toys when he was frustrated until someone sat down and actually played with him. I get it, Jake said. But I think they're scared, not evil. And scared kids need someone who isn't scared of them. 20 minutes later, Jake found himself standing outside the containment cell. Through the observation glass above, he could see the entire Galactic Council watching. No pressure or anything. The door opened with a hiss. Jake walked in slowly, no weapons, no fancy equipment. Just him in his janitor uniform, carrying his maintenance cart. The twins were in the far corner, huddled together like they always were. They turned to face him immediately. Their big multifaceted eyes reflected the lights in 1,000 tiny rainbows. Their antennae stood straight up, alert and possibly afraid. Jake sat down cross-legged on the floor about 10 feet away from them. Not too close to be threatening, not too far to seem unfriendly. Hey there, little ones, he said softly, like he was talking to his nephews. My name's Jake. I brought you something. He reached into his maintenance cart slowly, making sure they could see his hands the whole time. He pulled out 2 juice boxes he'd grabbed from the cafeteria on the way here. Apple juice, the kind with the bendy straws. The twins tilted their heads in perfect unison. Their antennae quivered, twitching left and right. Jake set the juice boxes on the floor between them and slid them gently forward. They stopped about halfway between him and the twins. Then he waited. Above them, through the glass, he knew dozens of the galaxy's most powerful beings were holding their breath. But Jake wasn't thinking about them. He was thinking about how his nephew Danny always needed a minute to warm up to new people. How you couldn't rush trust. The smaller twin moved first, just one tiny step forward. The bigger one chittered something, a clicking sound that didn't need translation. It sounded worried. It's okay, Jake said quietly. Just juice. It's sweet. Kids usually like it. The smaller twin took another step. Then another. Its little legs clicking softly on the metal floor. It reached the juice boxes and stopped, looking at them carefully. Then it looked at Jake. Jake smiled and nodded. The twin picked up a juice box with its small clawed hands. Studied it. Then very carefully pulled the straw off the side and poked it through the top, exactly like it was designed to work. It took a sip. Its antennae shot straight up, quivering with what Jake was pretty sure was happiness. The bigger twin scuttled forward quickly, grabbed the second juice box and did the same thing. Both twins sat down right there in the middle of the floor, drinking their apple juice. And Jake Miller, the janitor who was supposed to be mopping floors, sat with them and started humming that old song his mother used to sing. Neither twin destroyed anything. Neither twin rewrote anyone's mind. They just sat there drinking juice, listening to a simple human song. Sometimes the best solutions are the simplest ones. Day 3 of what the council staff had started calling Operation Human Babysitter, and nobody could quite believe what they were seeing. Jake had actually moved a cot into the containment area. Not a fancy alien sleeping pod or some high-tech rest chamber. Just a simple folding cot from the supply closet, the kind that squeaked when you rolled over. He'd also brought in a small camping lamp, a duffel bag of clothes and a coffee maker. The twins had watched with fascination as he set everything up, their antennae twitching at every new item. Now, 72 hours into the experiment, the transformation was remarkable. The twins followed Jake everywhere. And when I say everywhere, I mean literally attached to him. The smaller one, which Jake had started calling Pip in his head, had claimed Jake's left shoulder as his personal throne. He'd climb up there first thing in the morning and ride around like a little purple parrot, his tiny clawed feet gripping Jake's uniform shirt. The bigger one, Pop, preferred to grab onto Jake's belt loop with one claw and waddle alongside him wherever he went, making soft clicking sounds. In the observation room above the containment cell, Admiral Croth stood with his arms crossed, staring at the security monitors like they were showing him something impossible. Which, to be fair, they kind of were. "Explain this to me," Croth demanded, gesturing at the screen. "Explain how this is working." On the monitor, Jake was sitting cross-legged on the floor with the twins. He'd found a soft foam ball somewhere, bright blue and about the size of a grapefruit. He tossed it gently to Pip, who tried to catch it with his small claws. The ball bounced off Pip's head and rolled away. Jake had been working with the twins for 3 days straight. He'd only left the containment cell twice, both times to shower and grab fresh clothes. He ate his meals in there with them. Slept on that squeaky cot while they curled up in a nest of blankets nearby. The council had offered to install better furniture, but Jake said no. He kept everything simple. "Watch what happens when they mess up," Dr. Beth Carson said, pointing at the screen. She'd been taking notes constantly, filling up 3 tablets with observations. "This is important." On screen, Pop tried to catch the ball next. He missed completely and the ball rolled under Jake's cot. Pop's antennae drooped in what was clearly disappointment. 3 days ago, that frustration would have resulted in the walls melting or the ball exploding or Pop teleporting everyone in the room to another dimension. Now Pop just made a sad clicking sound and started to walk toward the cot. But then he stopped, looked at the wall, and his body started to shimmer, going slightly transparent. "He's phasing," Croth said tensely. "He's going to go through the wall to get the ball." Jake noticed too. He set down his coffee cup and gently picked up Pop, holding the little alien carefully. Pop was about the size of a small cat, his purple shell warm to the touch. "Nope, buddy," Jake said calmly, no anger in his voice at all. "We don't go through walls when we're inside. Remember? That's one of our rules." Pop's antennae drooped even more. He made a protesting chirp. "I know you can do it," Jake continued, still holding him. "And yeah, it would be faster. But we talked about this, right? Going through walls makes the scientists nervous and it's not safe. You might end up somewhere you don't want to be. If you want the ball, you've got 2 choices. You can ask me for help or you can walk around the cot. What do you want to do?" Pop's whole body seemed to slump. Then he made a soft chittering sound, quieter than before. Jake's face broke into a smile. "Yeah. You want help? That's great, buddy. Good job using your words. Well, your clicks, but you know what I mean." He set Pop down, walked to the cot, got on his hands and knees and retrieved the ball. Then he handed it to Pop, who clutched it with both claws like it was treasure. In the observation room, Vorith leaned forward, his 4 eyes wide. The human is negotiating with them. He's actually having a conversation with beings that have destroyed half our station. "It's more than negotiating," Beth said, her voice excited in that way scientists get when they discover something new. "He's parenting. Look at the structure he's created. It's brilliant." She pulled up her notes on the main screen. Jake has established consistent routines. Breakfast at 800 hours, always the same foods until the twins indicate they want something different. Playtime from 9 to 11. Lunch at noon. Quiet time after lunch where he reads to them. More play in the afternoon. Dinner at 6. Bath time at 7, bedtime at 8. Every single day the exact same schedule. Why does that matter? Croth asked, though he was watching the screen more carefully now. Because kids thrive on routine, Beth explained. It makes them feel safe. They know what's coming next. There are no surprises, no sudden scares. And watch how he handles boundaries. He's calm, he's consistent, and most importantly, he explains the rules instead of just enforcing them. On the screen, Jake had started the game again. This time he was showing the twins how to roll the ball instead of throwing it, since their hand-eye coordination wasn't great yet. Pop rolled the ball and it went wide, heading for the corner. Pip jumped off Jake's shoulder and scuttled after it, his little legs moving fast. He grabbed the ball, but instead of bringing it back, he started to lift off the ground. Telekinesis, one of the twins' many abilities. Pip, feet on the floor please, Jake called out. Pip lowered back down immediately. Thank you, Jake said. I know flying is fun, but we're playing a ground game right now. Can you roll it back to your brother? Pip chittered and rolled the ball across the floor to Pop. Croth's scaled face was completely bewildered. They're obeying him. Beings that can rewrite reality are following the instructions of a janitor. Because he's meeting their needs before problems escalate, Beth said, practically bouncing with excitement. Look at his approach. He's not waiting for them to act out. Food on a regular schedule so they never get hungry enough to be cranky. Playtime that burns off energy. Rest periods so they don't get overtired. He's anticipating what they need and providing it. But he has no defenses, Croth protested, though his voice was less aggressive now. No weapons, no psionic shields, no backup plan. If they decide to attack him. That's exactly why this works, Beth interrupted, and something clicked in her mind as she said it. Don't you see? Every other person we sent in was afraid of the twins. They came in with weapons, with mental shields, with contingency plans for if things went wrong. The twins could sense all of that. The fear, the preparation for violence. It told them they were dangerous, that they should be scared too. She gestured at the screen where Jake was now laying on his stomach, rolling the ball back and forth with Pop while Pip climbed on his back. Jake isn't afraid of them, Beth continued. He has no weapons because he doesn't think he needs weapons. No psionic pressure because humans don't have psionics. No fear smell because he genuinely sees them as kids, not threats. He's just a guy who brings them juice boxes and plays catch and tucks them in at night. Queen Valera had been standing in the back of the observation room this entire time, silent and still. Now she moved forward, her massive form casting shadows across the monitors. Her 4 eyes were fixed on the screen where her children were playing. He treats them with kindness, Valera said softly, her translated voice barely above a whisper. Simple kindness. Something we forgot to try. The room fell quiet. On the screen Jake had pulled out his tablet. The twins immediately abandoned the ball and scrambled over to him, Pip reclaiming his shoulder perch and Pop settling into Jake's lap like a cat. Okay guys, story time, Jake said. What do we want to read today? We finished the one about the mouse with the motorcycle yesterday. Pop chittered and pointed at the tablet with one claw. The caterpillar one again? Buddy, we've read that 4 times. Jake laughed. But okay if that's what you want. He pulled up the book, a classic Earth children's story about a caterpillar eating through various foods before building a cocoon and becoming a butterfly. Simple pictures, simple words. The twins snuggled against him, their antennae relaxed and drooping in contentment. Jake started reading in that voice adults use for kids' books, making different sounds for each food the caterpillar ate. Their breathing synchronized, slow and calm. Pop's eyes were already starting to close. Pip yawned, showing rows of tiny teeth. Jake read the whole book, even though both twins fell asleep halfway through. Then he carefully set down the tablet, adjusted them so they were comfortable, and just sat there with 2 of the most powerful beings in the galaxy sleeping on him like puppies. He looked up at the camera, right at where he knew the council was watching. They're good kids, he said quietly so he wouldn't wake them. They were just scared. Nobody's scary when they're scared. They just need someone to show them it's safe to not be scared anymore. Admiral Croth stared at the screen for a long moment. Then he turned to Vorith. I don't understand it, Croth admitted. But it's working. Sometimes, Vorith said slowly, the best solutions are the ones we overlook because they seem too simple. Beth saved her notes and smiled. We've been trying to control them with force and technology. Jake's just loving them. Turns out love is stronger than force fields. On the screen, Jake carefully lifted both sleeping twins and carried them to their nest of blankets. He tucked them in like any parent would, gentle and patient. The most powerful weapons in the galaxy, pacified by apple juice and bedtime stories. Sometimes the impossible is only impossible because nobody tried being kind first. On day 7, Jake received a message on his tablet that Queen Valera wanted to meet with him privately. Not in the observation room with all the council members watching. Not in the containment cell with cameras recording everything. Just the two of them alone. Well, not completely alone. Pip and Pop were coming too, obviously. They went everywhere with Jake now. The meeting was set up in one of the diplomatic chambers, a fancy room that Jake had only seen while mopping the floors outside. He'd never actually been inside. When the doors opened, he let out a low whistle. The ceiling had to be 40 feet high, decorated with murals from a dozen different planets. The floor was polished stone that probably cost more than Jake's entire yearly salary. Queen Valera sat on what could only be described as a throne. It was massive, built to accommodate her 12-foot insect body, made of some dark metal that seemed to absorb light. She looked powerful and intimidating, every inch the ruler of an entire species. Jake walked in wearing his janitor uniform because, well, it was all he had. He carried a cushioned box that the twins had adopted as their portable bed. Both Pip and Pop were already asleep inside, curled around each other like they always did during nap time. He set the box down carefully beside a regular chair that someone had placed near the Queen's throne. It looked almost comical, this simple plastic chair next to her elaborate seat. Jake sat down, made sure the twins were comfortable, and looked up at Valera. Her 4 eyes were watching him intently. "Thank you for coming, Mr. Miller," she said, her translator converting her natural clicking speech into words he could understand. Her voice sounded different than it had in the council meetings. Softer. Tired. "Just Jake is fine, Your Majesty," he said. "Then you may call me Valera," she replied. "I believe we are past the need for such formalities, given that you have been raising my children for the past week." Jake smiled a little at that. "I wouldn't say raising. More like babysitting." Valera was quiet for a moment. Then she spoke, and Jake could hear something in her voice he hadn't expected. "Shame. I owe you an explanation, Jake," she said. "And I owe my children an apology, though I do not know if they can understand it yet." "You don't owe me anything," Jake started, but Valera raised one of her clawed hands. "Please. Let me speak. I need to tell someone this truth, and you are the only one who has earned the right to hear it." So Jake settled back in his chair and listened. Valera told him about the hive, her species. How they had existed for millions of years, spreading across multiple star systems. How somewhere along the way they had decided that efficiency was the highest virtue. Every action had to serve a purpose. Every moment had to be optimized. Emotions became seen as weaknesses, distractions from productivity. "We engineered ourselves to be perfect," Valera said, her antennae drooping. "Or what we thought was perfect. When our young hatched, we immediately placed them in neural education pods. Machines that would download information directly into their developing minds. Everything they needed to know, implanted in days instead of years. They were raised by artificial intelligence systems, fed on schedules calculated to the second, taught skills through program simulations." Jake felt his stomach turn a little at that. They never had parents? Never had someone to just hold them? "No," Valera said quietly. "The pods were more efficient. One AI could raise hundreds of young at once. Parents could continue their work without interruption. It was logical. Practical." "It sounds lonely," Jake said. Valera's whole body seemed to shudder. "I am beginning to understand that now. But for thousands of generations this was our way. We forgot that it had ever been different. Until my twins were born." She told him about the cosmic storm, a massive space phenomenon that happened once every few million years. The twins had been born during its peak, when reality itself was unstable. Maybe that's why they had powers no other hive member had ever possessed. Maybe the storm had changed them somehow. Nobody knew for sure. "The neural pods could not hold them," Valera continued. "They simply phased through the walls. When we tried to force them back inside, they rewrote the AI programming. When we brought in specialists with psionic abilities to calm them, the twins turned those abilities back on the specialists." "So you tried force," Jake said, not judging, just stating facts. "Yes. Containment. Control. Every method we knew." Valera looked at her sleeping children, and if an insect face could look heartbroken, hers did. "We treated them like malfunctioning equipment that needed to be fixed. We never tried simply being with them." Jake thought about his nephews back on Earth. About how little Danny had needed someone to sit with him during thunderstorms, not because there was any solution to his fear, but just because being alone made it worse. About how Ricky would calm down from tantrums faster if you just held him instead of trying to reason with him. You forgot how, Jake said gently. To just be with them. Yes. Valera's antennae trembled, which Jake had learned was like a human crying. Millennia ago, before what we call the Great Optimization, our ancestors bonded with their young. We have records of it in our historical archives. Stories of parents teaching children to hunt, to build, to communicate. Playing with them. Comforting them when they were afraid. She paused, and her voice got even quieter. We have the records, but we have no memory of how it felt. How to do it. That knowledge was optimized away, deemed inefficient. And now I have children who need exactly that, and I do not know how to give it to them. Jake looked down at Pip and Pop, sleeping peacefully in their box. Pop was snoring, a soft clicking sound. Pip had one claw wrapped around his brother's leg. You gave them what I could not remember to give, Valera said. Presence. Just being there with them. Patience when they made mistakes. And love. Simple, uncomplicated love. It's not too late, Jake said, meeting her eyes. To learn, I mean. They ask about you, you know. Valera's antennae shot straight up. They do. Yeah. Well, in their way. They click differently when they see you on the monitors. Pip tries to point at you. I think they know you're their mom. They just don't know how to connect with you yet. Something shifted in Valera's face. Hope maybe. Could you teach me, she asked. What you have learned? So over the next week, Jake became a teacher. Every afternoon, Valera would come to the containment cell, and Jake would show her what he'd figured out. He taught her how to read the twins' antennae. When they pointed straight up, the twins were alert or surprised. When they drooped down, the twins were sad or tired. When they vibrated rapidly, the twins were excited or happy. He showed her how to play the chase game that Pip and Pop loved. You had to run slowly enough that they could catch you, but fast enough that it felt like a challenge. And when they caught you, you had to fall down dramatically and let them climb on you, chittering in victory. He explained nap time, which was apparently a battle Valera had never won. You can't just tell them to sleep, Jake said. You have to wind them down first. Read them a story, lower the lights, maybe hum something soft. Make it a routine so their bodies know it's sleep time. Valera tried, her massive form attempting to curl up with the twins the way Jake did. It took a few attempts to figure out the right position. Her body was different from a human's after all. But eventually she managed to settle down with Pip on one side and Pop on the other. Jake read them the caterpillar story because it was still their favorite. Valera listened, her translator working quietly. When the twins' eyes started to close, she hummed softly, a clicking melody that sounded ancient and beautiful. They fell asleep against their mother. In the observation room above, every council member who was watching felt the weight of the moment. Dr. Beth Carson had tears running down her face. Admiral Croth, who never showed emotion, had turned away from the screen to compose himself. The next day Pop made a drawing. He'd been practicing with his telekinesis, moving small objects around. Today he arranged his food pellets on the floor in a pattern, a crude picture of 3 figures. One big, 2 small. He showed it to Valera, chittering excitedly. Valera looked at the drawing for a long moment. Then she reached down and gently touched Pop's head, the way Jake had shown her. It is beautiful, my child, she said. You are very talented. Pop's antennae vibrated so fast they were almost a blur. He grabbed more food pellets and started making another picture immediately. Beth had to leave the observation room because she was crying too hard to see the monitors. Council Prime Vorith stood beside Jake, watching through the glass as Valera played with her children. We are witnessing history, Vorith whispered. A species remembering its heart. Jake just smiled. Nah. We're just watching a mom learn to be a mom. That's not history. That's just life. But deep down he knew Vorith was right. The hive would never be the same. And it all started because a janitor decided to bring 2 scared kids some apple juice. Sometimes the smallest gestures change entire worlds. 6 months had passed since Jake Miller first walked into that containment cell with 2 juice boxes and a simple idea that scared kids just needed someone to be kind to them. Now he stood in the Grand Assembly Hall, facing representatives from over 200 different species, and he was honestly wondering how his life had gotten this weird. He was still wearing his maintenance uniform. The council had offered to get him a fancy suit, something more appropriate for addressing galactic leaders. Jake had politely declined. The uniform felt right. It reminded him and everyone else who he actually was. Just a guy who cleaned floors for a living. The assembly hall was massive, easily the size of 3 football fields. Seats rose up in curved tiers, each section designed for different species with different needs. Some seats were filled with water for aquatic beings. Others hung from the ceiling for species that preferred to be upside down. In the center of it all was a small stage, and on that stage stood Jake, feeling very small and very out of place. What the galactic media had started calling the Human Janitor Protocol had spread across known space like wildfire. It sounded so official and important when they said it like that. Jake still cringed every time he heard it. He'd just been trying to help some scared kids, not start a movement. But here's what had happened in those 6 months. 17 different species had formally requested human consultants to help with their childcare practices. Turns out a lot of civilizations had gone the same route as the Hive, optimizing everything, making child rearing efficient and systematic, forgetting that kids needed more than just food and education. The Hive had opened something they called a bonding center. It was the first one built in over 3,000 years. Instead of neural education pods and AI caretakers, Hive parents were learning to actually spend time with their young, to play with them, to comfort them when they were scared. Valera herself taught classes there twice a week. And Pip and Pop? Those two were thriving. They still had their reality warping powers, but now they used them for fun instead of defense. Last week Pop had turned the cafeteria ceiling into a projection of outer space, complete with moving stars and planets, just because he thought it looked pretty. Pip had learned to teleport, but only used it to surprise Jake by appearing on his shoulder when Jake least expected it. The twins were happy. That was the part that mattered most to Jake. "Mr. Miller," the assembly speaker said, gesturing for him to approach the central podium. "Please share your insights with the assembly." Jake walked forward, his work boots squeaking slightly on the polished floor. Hundreds of alien eyes watched him. Cameras from a dozen news networks were recording. This speech would be broadcast across the entire galaxy. No pressure. He cleared his throat and leaned toward the microphone. Hi everyone. I'm Jake. I clean the bathrooms at council headquarters." A ripple of what might have been laughter went through the crowd. Jake smiled a little. "Look, I gotta be clear about something right up front," he continued. "This whole thing, this protocol they named after me, it's not about humans being special or better than anyone else. We're not. Trust me, we've got our own problems back on Earth." He saw Ambassador Tom Bradford standing off to the side, nodding encouragingly. Tom was the official human representative to the Galactic Council, a career diplomat who actually knew what he was doing. He'd been incredibly supportive of Jake, even when Jake had no idea what he was doing. What happened with Pip and Pop, with Queen Valera's twins, it wasn't magic, Jake said. It was just about remembering something really simple. Kids, no matter what species they are, they need connection. Not just correction. He could see some of the representatives leaning forward now, paying closer attention. See, everyone kept trying to control the twins. To fix them. To make them behave through force or technology or whatever. But nobody was asking why they were acting out in the first place. Nobody was treating them like people with feelings and needs. They were treating them like problems that needed solving. Jake thought about his nephews back home. About all the times adults had tried to discipline Danny without understanding he just got overwhelmed in loud places. About how many teachers had punished Ricky for fidgeting instead of realizing the kid just needed to move his body to think clearly. "Kids aren't problems," Jake said firmly. "They're just little people who don't have all the skills yet to deal with big feelings. And when we forget that, when we treat them like things to be managed instead of people to be understood, that's when stuff goes wrong." Ambassador Tom stepped up to join him at the podium. Tom was in his 60s, silver hair perfectly styled, wearing an actual diplomatic suit that probably cost more than Jake's car back on Earth. "Earth is deeply honored to share our caregiving practices with the galactic community," Tom said in his smooth diplomatic voice. "But I want to emphasize that this is a mutual exchange. We're not here to tell you that human methods are superior. We're here to learn from each other." Tom pulled up a holographic display showing various collaborative programs that had started in the past months. The Hive's patience training techniques have been revolutionary for human parents dealing with difficult temperaments, Tom explained. The Aquari's emotional resonance practices, their ability to synchronize feelings with their young, we're studying that to help human children with autism spectrum disorders. The Veltharian musical education methods are being implemented in Earth schools. Jake watched the holograms cycle through images. Human teachers working alongside Hive workers. Aquari counselors training human therapists. It was all pretty amazing when you thought about it. "We're all teaching each other," Tom concluded. "That's what makes this work. Shared knowledge, shared respect." The assembly asked questions for another hour. "How did you know the twins would respond to kindness? What training did you have? How can we implement these practices with our own young?" Jake answered as honestly as he could. He didn't have fancy degrees or years of study. He just paid attention. Watched the twins. treated them like his nephews, used common sense and basic decency. When it was finally over, Jake was exhausted. Public speaking was way harder than mopping floors. Back at council headquarters, Jake headed to Voritha's office. The council prime had requested a private meeting. "Mr. Miller," Vorith said as Jake walked in, "we have a proposition for you." Here it came. Jake had been expecting this. They offered him everything. A position as special advisor on interspecies child development. An office on the executive level with windows that overlooked the station's central gardens. A salary that made Jake's eyes water when he saw the number. His own staff. A personal transport shuttle. Jake listened politely to all of it. Then he smiled and shook his head. "I appreciate it, I really do," Jake said. "But I'm gonna have to pass." Voritha's 4 eyes blinked in confusion. "You're declining?" "Yeah. But I do have a counteroffer." "Which is?" "Let me keep my janitorial job. Just add flexible hours so I can help out with the twins when needed, or consult on stuff if you really need me to. But I want to keep cleaning. That's what I'm good at." Vorith was silent for a long moment. "I do not understand, Mr. Miller. Why would you choose manual labor over a position of prestige and comfort?" Jake shrugged. "Because I like the work. It's honest, it's useful. And someone's got to keep this place clean, right? Plus, when I'm mopping floors, people don't treat me like some kind of celebrity. They just see the janitor. I can talk to them like normal. Hear what's really going on." Understanding dawned on Voritha's face. "You wish to remain accessible." "Exactly. So that's what Jake did. He kept his job, kept his maintenance cart, kept his squeaky work boots. He still showed up at 6 in the morning to clean the council chambers. Still hummed old songs while he mopped. But now, a couple times a week, he'd also consult on childcare issues. Or guest lecture at the new bonding center. Or video call with human families back on Earth who were struggling with their kids. He'd been offered diplomatic missions to other planets. Teaching positions at prestigious universities. Celebrity endorsements for products he'd never heard of. He turned down all of it. Jake Miller was still just a janitor. And he liked it that way. Now, 6 months after everything started, Jake walked through the familiar corridors of council headquarters with Pip and Pop scuttling along beside him. They visited every week even though they lived with their mother now. The twins had bonded with Valera, but they still loved their Uncle Jake. "You guys hungry?" Jake asked them. "Katie's teaching a class in the cafeteria. Bet we can snag some samples." Both twins chittered excitedly and rushed ahead. Katie Jensen worked in human services, coordinating the exchange programs between Earth and various alien species. She was also teaching cooking classes because, as she discovered, grilled cheese sandwiches were universally delicious to pretty much every species that could eat bread and dairy. When Jake walked into the cafeteria, he found Katie surrounded by a dozen young hive workers, all of them carefully assembling sandwiches under her instruction. "Butter on the outside of the bread," Katie was saying. "That's what makes it crispy and golden. See?" Pip and Pop immediately ran to Katie, climbing up her legs to get a better view of the cooking process. She laughed and lifted them up to sit on the counter where they could watch. "Hey Jake," Katie called out. "Perfect timing. We just made extras." Jake grabbed a sandwich and took a bite. Still warm, cheese perfectly melted. "Katie, this is amazing. Right? And check it out, the hive workers are natural at this. Their fine motor control is incredible." One of the young hive workers, barely older than Pip and Pop, carefully flipped a sandwich in the pan. When it came out perfect, golden brown on both sides, their antennae vibrated with pride. Jake watched them all, these different species learning from each other, sharing something as simple as how to make a sandwich. And he thought about how far they'd all come. 6 months ago, the galaxy had been terrified of 2 little kids with powers they didn't understand. Now those kids were happily eating grilled cheese and teaching the cooks how to make the cheese extra stretchy using telekinesis. Jake Miller hadn't changed the galaxy because he was special or gifted or trained. He changed it by showing up with juice boxes and patience. By treating scared kids with kindness instead of fear. Sometimes that's all it takes. Just showing up. Just caring. Just trying. As Pip teleported onto Jake's shoulder and Pop grabbed his belt loop like old times, Jake smiled. He was still just a janitor. Still the guy who hummed while he mopped. Still the guy who kept juice boxes in his cart. But now he was also the guy who'd proven that sometimes the biggest problems in the universe just need the smallest, simplest solutions. Kindness. Patience. Showing up. Sometimes that's enough to move entire worlds.